Today is World Bipolar Day, and I'm someone that lives with bipolar disorder. I have since 2000, and since 2014, I've been a mental health advocate. I'm optimistic you can hear me okay. I did a live video on here earlier today without a mic, and it was very quiet. So I'm optimistic that I'm loud enough. And today's topic, or this topic, is all about how and when to share about your diagnosis and struggles. So, first of all, if you are someone diagnosed with bipolar disorder or any mental illness, it is entirely up to you who you disclose that to and who you do not disclose that to. If you prefer to only disclose that to direct family, that is quite all right. That is 100% your choice. I'm going to share my experience in terms of sharing about my diagnosis. In the first 10 years of my bipolar journey, the only people that knew I was living with bipolar disorder were my direct family and extended family. I didn't tell any friends, I didn't tell any coworkers, didn't tell any of my bosses, any of my neighbors. No one except family knew. At that time, I had a lot of shame, guilt, and embarrassment. I also told myself that people would think I was weird. People might socially outcast me if they knew that I was living with bipolar disorder, they might treat me differently. So I didn't tell anyone. And when I look back, that's the choice I made, and that was my journey. And then in the year 2010, I made some huge life changes. So I left the corporate world in Calgary. I moved out to the mountains to a smaller area and sold my place. I had a condo in Calgary. I sold that, became a renter again. At that time, I had a part time business and I became a server for the temporary period until my business grew and I'd be full time doing my business. And in 2010, I started telling friends that I lived with bipolar disorder. I was really nervous and hesitant to do so. And I was shocked. They were all surprised. They had no idea I was living with bipolar disorder. And, when I reflect on that, it makes sense because when I was doing things with friends, it was always really fun things, things that I really enjoy. For example, going for a hike, going for a mountain bike ride, going downhill skiing, going to a film festival, going to a pub, going to see a live band, maybe going to a music festival, maybe going to an art display. And they're always like really high energy, high vibe sort of times. So they didn't see me when I was feeling depressed. They didn't know or see me when I was in the psych ward after a manic episode or during a manic episode. Because during the years 2000 to 2010, I had three manic episodes requiring psychiatric ward stays. The first one was 3 weeks, and then the other two were 1 week. And I didn't tell any of my friends about that. They had no idea. Um, and then in the year 2014, I became a mental health advocate, and I started doing my best to reduce stigma and raise awareness for bipolar disorder and mental illness in general. So since that time, I've felt increasingly more comfortable as the years went on, sharing about my bipolar journey, sharing about my struggles, my experiences, what I've went through. And I'm at the point now where, I live in a smaller town and sometimes, not all the time, people will come up to me and say, "Hey, you're the guy that does those mental health events," or I work as a server in my town here in Banff, and sometimes I'll be serving someone that I don't know, and they'll say, "Oh, you're the guy that does those mental health events," and I always feel really honored and humbled when people say that, and I'm totally comfortable being known as someone who lives with a mental illness, someone who lives with bipolar disorder, and I realize that not everyone is, and that is quite all right. Last year, uh, a younger friend of mine told me they had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. They told me in a private conversation. I was really honored and humbled when they told me that, and I kept that private. We went on a few walks. They shared about a little bit about their life, a little bit about their experience, their journey with bipolar disorder. But bottom line is, I didn't share that with anyone else. Um, and that person may or may not disclose their diagnosis to others at some point in the future moving forward. And whatever they choose is 100% their choice. Now, in terms of struggles, that is something that is a huge topic. I'll do my best to keep it concise. Struggles, both the ups and the downs of bipolar disorder, it can be a tricky thing to navigate. Essentially, when someone is feeling a little bit on the upside, which is called hypomanic, it's very, very hard to not want to feel that way, because when I've been hypomanic, I've been more confident, more energetic. I've had many creative ideas, basically like in a flow state. So it's hard to not want to feel that. The delineating factor for me when I'm hypomanic is, how is my sleep, and am I getting to sleep quickly? Because bottom line is, when there's all these creative ideas coming about, sometimes it can be hard to get to sleep. So personally, when I'm feeling hypomanic, I stress self-care. I'll take baths. I'll limit technology. I will maybe use an acupressure mat. I will do meditation. I will do many, many things. I'll even take GABA, melatonin, anything I can do possibly to slow my mind down, to get my body more relaxed, to get my body taking in less information, especially off a screen. And in general, I don't reach out to people. I will be honest with people, and I'll say, hey, I had a hard time sleeping last night. And the common reaction is, oh, what happened? I'll say, well, my brain just wasn't turning off. It's good stuff. But I'm comfortable sharing that. And then, of course, normally what happens is, after one night of being hypomanic, I'll be a little bit tired, and then the next night I'll get to bed earlier and it'll square out. Conversely, there have been times in my past where it's been like 2 nights where I've had a hard time getting to sleep. And at that point, it can get concerning, because hypomania, if it's not checked and if it's not mitigated, can turn into full-blown mania. And full-blown mania is when someone is essentially in an alternate reality. They can be in psychosis and potentially in a psych ward. And I have no desire to ever be in a psych ward again. I'm optimistic I won't be again. Most people living with bipolar disorder, like myself, use a wide range of tools to calm their mind, to calm their body when they're feeling hypomanic. So like I say, I'm comfortable sharing to people that I'm hypomanic, and I'm usually just very energetic and very creative. On the flip side, when I'm starting to feel a little bit low, that's something I could work on. I don't always reach out to people when I'm feeling a little bit low. Thankfully, that rarely happens to me now. I've developed many tools to right myself when I'm feeling a bit low, to get back to being more stable. But that being said, that's something I could work on, and I'm extremely fortunate. I have an amazing support network of people. It's 2 to 4 friends, and my support group is 4 friends. That's my network, and they all live in different places. And essentially, they're all people that I reach out to when I'm struggling, or when I'm looking for assistance, helping me navigate this thing called life. And whether you have a diagnosed mental illness, whether you have bipolar disorder or not, I really encourage you to consciously co-create and maintain a strong support network of ideally 2 to 4 people. I feel one person is too burdening for that person. It can be too much. And I personally think, with my experience anyways, that more than four people can be tough. It's hard to have the bandwidth for that. But bottom line is, when you co-create and maintain a support network, it means that those people, of course, are there to help you, and they're there to support you when and if required. Um, so I'm optimistic you got something out of this video today, maybe even a little nugget. And if there's anyone in your life you know living with bipolar disorder, I'd greatly appreciate you considering sharing this video with them. They might get something out of it. And if you're not already, consider following me here. I'd really appreciate that. Of course, that helps my audience grow, my platform grow. And later today at 7:30, I'll also be leading another live event on here, and that's called Calm Your Anxiety. And that event is more of an energetic meditation, and that's a 30-minute event, and I'll be teaching specific tools in there to assist you in managing your anxiety, not only today, but also moving forward in the future. So if that at all interests you and you're available, come join for that live event at 7:30 here, and that's Mountain Time. Once again, I really appreciate you watching this video. Thank you for being here. Create a wonderful rest of your day, and be well.